Yeah. All right, let me.
I was not having any luck. Thank you, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
hey.
Don't forget started.
All right, wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And so this meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with Ordinance 20A16, an ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. The opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting are posted on the Albemarle County website on the Albemarle County calendar. Participants will include the opportunity to comment during those matters for which comments from the public will be recorded. All right. And so we do have a quorum, and I just want to acknowledge our guest that we have, Mrs. Perkins. Thank you for joining us. And we are going to go ahead and I hope everybody had a chance. We have to see the agenda. So if we could go ahead and approve that, or somebody could make a motion for approval of the agenda.
I motion that we approve the agenda.
Thank you. A second on that?
I can second that.
Okay, thank you, Kate. And then Abigail, do you approve?
I approve.
Michael, do you approve?
I approve.
And is it Emma that's on the phone call? And Emma, do you approve? We'll take
Thumbs
that. Yes.
Yes, I approve.
Okay, wonderful.
Sorry.
And,
Okay.
okay. And then we actually,
Okay.
we have the April minutes. And so hopefully everybody got a chance to see those. So let's go ahead and somebody would like to make a motion to approve those minutes.
I make a
I'll move.
motion. Oh, go ahead.
Thank
I
you.
move that we approve the April 7th minutes.
Wonderful.
I'll
And
second it, Peggy.
okay, wonderful. And Abigail, do you approve?
I approve.
Kate, do you approve?
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't there for that one.
Right. And Emma, Emma, were you there?
I'm over there. Yeah.
Emma, do you approve?
Yes, I approve.
Okay, great. And Lonnie, I'm so glad you've been able to join us. Do you approve those April minutes?
He wasn't there.
Oh, thank you. You are on top of this.
Thank you, Peggy. I abstain.
Okay, fantastic. All right. And then we also, even though we had like a 5-minute meeting, we didn't have a quorum in May, but apparently we do have some very short minutes, and shall we approve those?
You can't have minutes if you don't have a meeting. You can't-
There was
you
just a
can't have-
sentence
We
there.
have to approve, Carolyn, we have to approve it's a record that there wasn't a meeting, that there wasn't a quorum. So
Okay, okay.
that's all the minutes say. And
Okay,
we do need to have that confirmed.
okay. There was no meeting in May because we didn't have a quorum. And can I move to approve that? I mean, a lot of us were not there. Emma and I were there.
Yeah.
So I move that
I
we
can-
approve that.
I can
Emma, do you
second it.
second it?
Yes.
Fantastic. And I believe Lonnie was there.
Yes,
And do you approve?
I do.
Fantastic. All right, that business is taken care of. Wonderful. All right. Candace Perkins, Director of Planning. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Hi.
Yeah, yeah. My name's Candace Perkins, new Director of Planning. Finished up month 2 so far with the county. So just a little bit. I'm from Winchester, Frederick County area, so that's where I was with Frederick County for the past 20 years. So happy to be here, and let me know if anyone needs anything from me. I'm excited to work with everyone in the future.
Wonderful. And do you have intersections with the biodiversity action plan? And could you tell us where those intersections would happen and sort of your familiarity with that and the work that you do with Kim?
Currently, 'cause I've been with the county for 2 months, so I'm definitely still getting up to speed with the plan and talking with Kim and
Yeah, so we've met, several times to talk about the land conservation programs and the natural resources program. And I briefed Candace on just an introduction to the BAP and, how it fits into the comp plan and the natural resources program. So, she's getting familiar with all that, and, we'll continue to work together moving forward. So Candace is the director of planning. So she has taken place of Charles Rapp, who we spoke with about a year ago. And Charles is now the deputy director of community development.
Yeah.
So I think, Christine, a lot of that will, kind of unfold as we move forward with the comp plan, especially in phase 2, when we get to the natural resources chapter and start digging into some of that.
Well, I hope that our committee can be useful to you and in any way that we can. And are you in where you worked before? Did you have a similar program?
no, we didn't have a similar program in Frederick County.
All right. Well, we look forward to working with you and welcome you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have questions or comments for Candace? I'm sure it takes a while to get your head wrapped around a job like this.
Definitely. There's a lot to learn and a lot to become familiar with. So
When there's a lot going on. Yeah, and we appreciate it. And I'm sure Kim has shared some of our priorities and the things that we've been working on with land preservation and really preserving those natural resources. Lonnie, you have a question or comment?
I do. Sorry to get into the finer details of things, but I know in previous discussions that we've had with Scott Clark and with the committee, one thing that we've discussed in the past is that in the growth area, the comprehensive plan is very detailed, and the various different comprehensive plan designations. In the rural area, there's only one comprehensive plan designation for the whole rural area.
By yourself. Yeah. Are you going to stay at the
Everybody's going.
Someone needs to, Peggy, could you mute? Anyway, given that there is a comprehensive plan rewrite going on, rewrite going on right now, what would be the best way for us to proceed at starting to open those discussions about maybe getting some more granularity in how the comprehensive plan views the rural area in terms of its designations?
right. And there's definitely, as we move into the phase 2 and kind of really digging into the other chapters, there's definitely a desire to really get into the rural areas and look at those and expand upon what's kind of been really a smaller section that's in the 2015 plan. So definitely going forward, it is going to be a component to really enhance that. But it's phase 2 is going to be more towards the fall after Rachel's group gets through with the growth management policy. So it'll be coming forward in a few months.
And since growth management is under discussion right now, would now be the time that our committee should weigh in on that policy, or how would you like to receive our input on that?
And sure, I mean, if there's any comments or questions, you can feel free to send them to me or Rachel or Kim, and we can give those to Rachel, who's heading up that effort. And we're also getting ready to do some kind of analysis of the rural areas to kind of expand upon what's been looked at in the growth management, kind of build out analysis, just to get a little more ideas of what's kind of out there in the rural areas. So yeah, any questions or comments that you want to send forward from the group, we would be glad to take those and incorporate those into what's going on now with phase 1.
I mean, I think as a individual, speaking of what we have spoken about in the past in the committee, I know that the way that development rights are determined in the county is a bit of a mess. Particularly, I know that, so we have the development rights that sort of like track with, parcels, and then we have the, you have 21, you can also make any number of 21 acre divisions that you want. The 21 acre divisions, although it was, when that was thought up, it was thought to be a good idea because, as someone said at the time, they said, well, no one's going to have a lawn that's 21 acres. No one would do that. But now we know better. People have and do make the clear 21 acres, make it a 21 acre lawn. And it's horrific. So what I think we really need to do is really revisit how we're doing that whole system. And, we talked about if, I would actually like to see, as opposed to what we have now, a mechanism by which we could say a maximum size of divisions that would be something more along the lines of 2 to 5 acres. Keeping the number of division rights, this is the number of, when people get their determination of division rights letter, that they could use that to make as many divisions, or that number of divisions of 2 to 5 acres as they want, as opposed to 25, as opposed to the current 21 acre divisions. Does it make sense? Sorry, it's a bit complex and in the weeds.
Right. No, I definitely understand what you're saying. As far as with the comp plan, that could be a point of discussion, and possibly depending on how that goes, rolled into the policy. As far as the actual changes, though, that's the zoning ordinance, which is a separate implementation document. So they're two separate pieces. So the comp plan could take in consideration suggested policy changes that would then influence future code changes. I definitely understand what your point.
And I would also say, I would suspect if we were to survey the people in this committee, that we are all opposed to expansion of the growth area. So in terms of the growth management discussion, if there are discussions about expansions of the growth area, I don't want to speak for anyone. If there's anyone out there in the committee that disagrees with me, please speak up. But I think we've historically been opposed to expansions of the growth area. And I can go into the policies of why and why we think that's why, things we've thought that's a bad idea. I mean, one of the big things is I think there's a lot of surface parking in the growth area right now. If you look at places like Albemarle Square, you look at places like Fashion Square Mall, those are major pollutants to waterways. All that water goes straight into the local streams. And there are streams like immediately next to those areas right now. I think if we expand the growth area, the odds those will be redeveloped into something that's more stormwater friendly are zero. There's no incentive to redevelop our underutilized spaces in the growth area until that's addressed. But I don't know if there's other people that would like to add in on any of those topics or have any other thoughts. Or just disagree with me.
Go ahead, Kim.
I agree. I agree with you, Lonnie.
Yeah, I wanted to, if anyone else on the committee wants to chime in first, I'm happy to pause.
Yeah, I would definitely say that I'm in agreement about that, the redevelopment of those underutilized areas, and also just really making sure that we're not having building lots in the stream buffers and really carving those out and making sure that we're keeping the building lots out of the stream buffers as much as possible, because those make really excellent greenways. So, and corridors. So that's my 2 cents. Michael, did you want to say something?
I agree with Lonnie. I've been more than a little concerned about large areas that are underutilized because of the economy or because of the rules that were in place in previous years that allow a place like Albemarle Square to stay essentially a large area where, as Lonnie was saying, water is funneled. And I think there are other areas as well. I think we need to come up with some incentives for different circumstances, whether it's different things that happen with the economy, or if it's developers that are perfectly satisfied with just keeping things the way they are, especially when we have large developments like the shopping centers that have been developed in the past. I know and Belk is not Albemarle Square, I don't believe, right? Albemarle Square is where ACAC is.
Belk is part of Fashion Square Mall.
Fashion Square,
Fashion
that's what
Square
I was looking for. I understand that there's some redevelopment that's being considered for that. I don't know where that stands. But that's another example of something that's stood for, several years now. And I understand COVID's been involved in some of these things. But again, I think if we can come up with some kind of an incentive plan with options, we may be able to get to a different, to a better status quo than what we currently have. That's all I was going to add.
I'd like to add too, like, I've just been appalled by this development that's gone in just above the Ravenna River behind Martha Jefferson Hospital. I mean, how did that ever get approved? Has anybody looked at that? It's unbelievable. They built a wall just like over here at Wegmans to hold it all up from the Ravenna River.
Yeah, I was appalled by that too.
Unbelievable.
That was pretty appalling.
Yeah, it's just, and that just kind of came out, it seemed to come out of nowhere. I don't know how that ever even got approved, but anyway.
A couple cents to add on the residential side, just the hope that we can have rules in place that prevent misuse of any sort of agriculture, pretend agriculture, allowing people to avoid buffer management and buffer maintenance is something that I have seen firsthand. And it is, we need to find a way to prevent that in the future. We need rules to make sure that if someone is going to qualify as agriculture, that they are going to actually qualify versus pretend. So anyway, thank you on that. All the oversight on that we can have is the better. Thank you.
Well, I could, oh, go ahead, Abigail. Did you want to?
Yeah, I don't know if this is really within our domain, but the oversight on the agricultural use would also really affect the what's it called, the tax rebate. I've seen a lot of fake farming happening where landowners are avoiding their taxes because they have a couple of goats or something. And so I think there are several areas where more oversight on that process could be really beneficial for the county.
The Bay Act would solve a lot of those problems.
Yeah, and Abigail, I think the big natural resources link to that is that we're incentivizing the wrong thing, because you can get 5 acres in land use. I may be getting this a little bit wrong. You can get 5 acres in land use, but you need 21, what is it? I think it's like 20 acres of forest, or 21 acres of forest to get forest. Maybe it's 20 acres of forest. anyway, the point is that the way that it's set up, it sort of incentivizes people to cut down trees and replace them with quote unquote hay. Where it should be the other way around, so like we should be incentivizing more forest and less clearing for low value hay. And I've heard a lot of reliable accounts where people are just like, rolling hay into the ditch somewhere, or just like rolling out a hay bale into the field when the assessor comes by. That they're not really, there's no real hay going on there. And I see Kate smiling and shaking her head about this.
Well, I mean, hay isn't just grass that's cut and put in a lump either. Like hay
It's
has
not.
to actually be quality. It has to be saleable. Somebody has to want to buy it because it's actually something you can feed to an animal and not have them wither away. Like it's actually, people who grow hay do a good job of management of their property, and they sell a product. This junk that's like baled and left there in the fields, that's not hay even. So anyway, that's a whole nother topic, but thank you, Lonnie, for
Yeah,
that.
if there's going to be a discussion to realign the incentives too, it seems like we could work in more of an ecological focus. So there's agriculture and then ecology. And so folks who are bringing native plant communities or restoring natural meadows and savanna, like if we also supported those folks in that endeavor, then that might help convert some of the existing pasture land into more beneficial land, also the natural focus.
Warm season grasses and, meadows and for wildlife too.
There is a way to do that. I haven't been able to convince staff to adopt that, but I mean, technically speaking, any program that's in a conservation program under agreement, for example, with the Stormwater Conservation District, should qualify for land use. But we haven't necessarily been applying that way or sort of marketing that as something that people could do. I think also if we could change the way the 21 acre lots are problematic, because 21 acres is what you need to qualify for land use. So basically people can maximize out their development rights in the rural area, and they still end up qualifying for land use even after they've maximized every building site that they have. That's one of the reasons I think that, as I said before, we need to have a 3 to 5 acre maximum for the division instead of 21 acres, because then when people do maximize out their development rights, they will no longer qualify for land use. Right now, I mean, they can build the maximum number of houses, and we're still paying them money to do that.
Yeah, I think that Candace, I think you're getting the picture of what our concerns are, and they're there. I live in a place where a bunch of land was divided in 21 acres lots. They're all getting the ag land use benefit, and they're not even harvesting hay off of it. So, and there's not a tree in sight. And so I think that it is something that really needs to be addressed if we're serious about climate action and equity. So, but I think that I'm glad that people have spoken up, so you get a sense of some of those concerns that we have.
And if I may, I've started this conversation, Candace, just by way of background for you and folks like Abigail who are new to the committee. I've started this conversation with the assessor's office, and we've had several meetings about that. And I think there's a recognition that, well, some of the issues that we have are governed by the state code, but some of them are directly related to the way that Albemarle's program is run. So I think there's definitely an opportunity to carry the concerns of this group forward in other discussions with the assessor's office, if they're open to that, because there are some ways that we could improve the program to better protect natural resources, and I'm really well in tune with all of that, because we've had some of these discussions before. So just sharing that I would love to have more follow-up with you and others if we have an opportunity to have that discussion.
Yeah, and I think it goes beyond natural resources. It's really an equity issue. Who gets these big tax breaks? And do we just hand them out to anybody, or do we ask something back from the people that get them?
Mhm. And like Lonnie said, we have, some programs that are trying to promote things like protecting stream buffers, but then we have this other program that is actually not intentionally, but indirectly encouraging folks to actually clear them so they get, more area to further land use benefit. So anyway, it's a bit of a sidetrack from the conversation, but I also just wanted to follow up to Lonnie's original point about the growth management policy and the focus on that right now. I've been studying this, and I've noticed a lot of the sections of the comp plan are very siloed, but that policy actually obviously has, a strong relationship on natural resources and the rural area. So I think that, I know some of you are on the work group, but there's lots of opportunities to provide feedback that way. But we could also consider having, a discussion on the policy group agenda if the group wants to meet, because I'm going to be working with some other folks in planning and the climate program to try to help potentially look at the rural area part of the growth management policy and think about adding more depth with respect to natural resources and climate. So this is an opportunity, and I think having a separate conversation with folks who are really interested in that is probably a good idea. And then, any other avenues you want to brainstorm for providing feedback while the time is right.
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right. Well, we are going to go ahead and proceed forward. And thank you, Candace, for being here. I don't know if you're going to stay on and listen in, or which you are certainly welcome to.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next thing is our follow-up, important sites and outreach. And just want to check in. Is there anybody who has been to any of our important sites or has anything to report back about them?
Yeah, did I report on the trip with DCR to Appleberry Mountain? I don't think I did.
No.
Okay, so I went with Joey Thompson and Karen Patterson of the DCR's Division of Natural Heritage, which hopefully you all know that they are the really the gatekeepers for protecting biodiversity in the state of Virginia. And so going out with expert ecologists, and we got permission from a landowner out there to look at some rock outcrops and to do some measurements of biodiversity of those sites. I got to talk to the owner of the rock outcrops, who's very interested in addressing, perhaps expanding his conservation easement to cover the whole site.
Nice.
So some great things. It was very interesting to develop that relationship with natural heritage. And actually I went out with some other natural heritage people, unfortunately not in Albemarle County, but in another county in Virginia. We did that just yesterday. So building those relationships with the state ecologist is, that's been really interesting. And then also just for me, just learning way more about sedges and grasses with experts who actually can tell how to know one from the other. So that was great.
Thanks, Lonnie. Yeah, that's those sedges and grasses. They're tough.
Oh man, I was out there yesterday, and so it's hard even to describe. So he was like taking the little tiny bits of the sedge fruiting, the sedge flower, and peeling off little bits of it to look at the internal organs of the sedge with a hand lens to say, now, if you look at this tiny little piece, this one's not divided. If it was divided, it'd be this other species. And said, And, you know, and this was Chris Ludwig, was a former natural heritage. And he said, oh, we're so lucky. This was an easy one to identify.
Yeah, that's, you know, it's nice to be able to go out with experts for sure, right? All right,
So,
thank you. for
Christine,
that.
can I just ask real quick, Lonnie, is that one of, is that an important site currently, or is it one that they were just exploring for the first time?
No, it isn't. It is currently.
It is, okay.
And yes, I need to update, put a report up there on the Google Drive.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Did you post photos on Facebook of that site, or I know you
I
put
may
interesting.
have.
Yeah.
I may have, and I will upload the photos too. And I can also ask, because I think Karen and Joey may also have some photographs as well. And in the past, they've been willing to share their data as well, things that they've identified.
And Lonnie, when you do upload them, would you just send us all an email just to say, hey, I did this, and so we know we can go take a look at it.
Yes, and just to clarify, the photos that were uploaded to social media were my own personal photos for my own personal use. They weren't, but I will upload them.
Okay. All right, thank you. And so I was at Darden Tower today because we have those no-mow areas. So I hadn't been out there in quite a long time. And we had a plan with the park with Jim Barber and Thomas Johnson and Jeremy, who is the foreman out there at Darden Tower, is to just do a strip and to experiment with planting some, I got the Piedmont upland mix from Ernst Seed Company. We got a pound of it, that seed. And then the idea was to try to mow down the fescue all spring, and then to go through and aerate it and try to scalp the grass down as low as it can get. And I'll have to send you guys some pictures. I was hoping that we'd have more bare ground because there was quite a bit of thatch that was left. And but it's a long strip that's probably 40 feet long, and it's about 12 feet wide. So I threw the seed out and we'll see what comes up. But they did expand the no-mow area to about 6 acres at Darden Tower. And Emma, I did talk to Jeremy today about the signage, and there was just a little miscommunication, but sounds like they can begin to move forward to get those signs out there. And I'm sure that many of you have been following the synthetic turf. I don't know if we had mentioned it, but the board was not able to have a consensus on that. So no action is going to be taken for fiscal year 2023 in terms of funding artificial turf at Darden Tower. I had an opportunity to take a look at the soccer fields over there, and they look good to me. But I'm sure that issue will be back in front of us at some point. But that is my update about Darden Tower. I don't know if anybody has anything they want to add.
Well, I hope that the warm season grasses take, that'll be really encouraging. It's not easy to put back what we've destroyed, I guess. That's the lesson there.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to meet with Lisa from Wittenborn from the RCA, and Thomas Johnson about the restoration project they had over at Burley Middle School in Charlottesville. And they had taken a sort of a wet area and have spent the last couple of years trying to restore it. And this was without the use of herbicides. So really trying to kind of scalp down as much of that fescue as possible. So I had an opportunity to tour that, and it looked really good to me, but there were a lot of things that were brought forward that I hadn't even thought about. When it gets mowed, if the mower can shoot the grass, the fescue seed into that area. So that causes a lot of problems. So a lot of things that I hadn't even considered are there to think about as well. So, but it will be an experiment. And I have to say that the places where the Nomo areas really look lovely, and they've mowed paths to the, they have a bluebird trail there. And I think that there are opportunities actually to expand it, but bit by bit, it's happening.
The wildlife certainly like the habitat better when it's not low to the ground. And there's so many more opportunities for hiding. With regard to the synthetic turf conversation, I just wanted to add that there was an opportunity for the board to vote to support actual professionals who would be able to address the grass question. And they also did not come to an agreement on that either. So that's an unfortunate thing, that they're still relying on grass information from non-grass professionals. So we can hope for more in the future, more open-mindedness to gather additional information. That opportunity still exists.
Yeah. And it's interesting to learn how that area is being managed in terms of providing a lot of flexibility. Jeremy said that they can get 10 games in there at one time almost, because they can do it they can make smaller fields. And so they constantly are sort of moving the goals around. And it sounded like a pretty nice system to accommodate a lot of different levels of play.
And there's really neat things when they're smart like that. You can move where your goals are, which means those really hard use places don't have to be in the same spot all the time, which really is an easy way to keep things in use, but to not destroy, to not really destroy the entire root structure, to allow it to recover without having to take something completely out of my words still don't come, rotation.
Yeah.
So very cool. I'm really glad you were out there. I look forward to getting there sometime soon. I want to see this Nomo area.
Yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing when we think about creating a sports complex there's no parking. And so right now, a lot of the parking happens on the grass. And that's part of the reason why we weren't really able to extend a lot of that Nomo area, because they have to accommodate that when you have large groups of people out. So just interesting. But I feel like the foreman takes a lot of pride in the park, and he's been really great to work with and very open-minded and accommodating. So really thankful for that.
Yeah, Jeremy is awesome. I worked with him for years at Ivy Creek. He's fantastic.
Yeah, really nice guy too. Yeah.
And he has a lot of knowledge about this type of work and trail systems and all sorts of things. So the more he can be engaged on these things, I think the better the system will be, just because he has a lot of awareness that he could really put to use if the support exists for him to do that.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't realize he had been at Ivy Creek. Michael, did you have a comment?
I was going to mention to the rest of the folks, I had a chance to finally get to Walnut Creek on my way back from graduation from our Master Gardener class on May 3rd. I'm using a new app that I've learned about. Some of you may know about it. It's called Picture This. I don't know whether you're familiar with it or not. It is a subscription based app, but it does give you a chance to collect data. And I was able to really spend some time there to get about 24 different species of trees, shrubs, and ground cover. And what I'm going to do is just put a list of that together. I don't know if that kind of information is available in our different county parks or not. And I'm not proposing to go out and do a survey of each and every county park, but I just want to get an idea of how many invasive species we have roaming around in our parks. We've talked about, we know more about where invasive species are than native species, although I appreciate the work that Lonnie's done on the database. But for me, it was really the first time to get out into one of our parks and really take a closer look at what's there, what the infrastructure looks like, and so forth. So I'm looking forward to being able to continue to do more of that in some of the other parks and kind of give you some feedback on what I learned.
Michael, I would strongly recommend iNaturalist over
iNaturalist, yeah.
Picture This. The data is, it's put out there for citizen scientists and other naturalists to use. It has the same same ability to identify photographs.
It's free.
Yeah, it's great.
It's free too. There's no charge.
And it's free.
Yeah. The other one, you have to pay for the one he was using. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can create, and you can also create projects. For example, you can create, we already created some projects for one of our county parks. Actually, two county parks. So you can create projects and gather data specifically on individual regions.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and also, Mike, I just want to mention that I created a Google Doc where if you see invasives or if you see something that needs to be addressed in the parks, to go ahead and make note of it. And there's an invitation to do that. So
I'll put an update in there. I haven't done that yet, but I will do that. And I'll get a longer list of the species I found and try to identify, native versus non-native.
sounds great. All right, wonderful. And Lonnie, you had put this on for our May agenda, but this is the rural road protection.
Correct. So working in partnership with, so there's, I'm going to forget the actual name of the group. There's a group that works on transportation issues of pedestrians and cyclists. And they hosted Peter Krebs with PEC is highly involved in this. And so they helped work to get a representative from Loudoun County. Loudoun County has already done a lot more work than Emerald in terms of protecting its rural gravel roads. It even had their own piece of their own law passed that acknowledges the importance of gravel roads in Loudoun County. And so they had just this really informative presentation, which I will share with all of you, about all the work they've done, about acknowledging the history of the gravel roads there. One of the big things they've found is that it's less expensive for Loudoun County to leave those gravel roads than to pave them. And that they're really, by focusing on better maintenance of those roads, the people that live on those roads are happier, they have a better maintained road. And then they don't have the other issues that you get from people speeding, more real estate development and other things occurring on those roads. So it was really an excellent, very informative presentation. We had 2 county supervisors listening in to the presentation, and we're swayed. I think we're really swayed by some of the comments in that presentation. Indeed, the next meeting with the Board of Supervisors after that, they did make an amendment to their rural road policy, actually, that I thought was very good. What they're going to start doing is that now it's going to be, they need a majority of people to sign a petition in order to get a road on the paving list. It used to be only one person could get a road on the paving list, but now they're going to require a majority of people to get it on the list. And not only that, and I think it's a 2/3 majority. I'll have to go back and check the exact number. But then the other thing they added is, that among the supervisors, they said, well, what do we do about the roads already on the list? And they all agreed that since this is the new policy, that before any road can be paved, even the ones on the list, they will need 2/3. They will need to get that petition of 2/3 majority. So I thought that was a huge step forward. It's not all the policy. It's certainly not, doesn't address all the policy concerns that the policy committee had brought forward, but I think it's a huge step in the right direction.
Nice news.
Yeah.
That was a really cool presentation. I didn't get to see it in live, but that article that I did read, Lonnie, was really informative. So I hope everyone will take a chance to read about it. And the other thing, if Loudoun can do it, that means Albemarle can do it. There's no preclusions in the state code that are going to prevent something that other counties are already doing. So hopefully progress will be easier with a model to follow.
Yeah. Then, and then I believe the next item on the agenda is the Montclair stream. Is that what we're doing next?
Yeah. And
And I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong impression. Frank, I had invited and he said he was going to try to come. He may have, oh, I'm getting a message now. I'm just getting a message from him right now. Hang on, let's,
we can move forward and come back to that. How's that sound?
just give me 1 second. Yeah.
Is that okay? Or Lonnie, if do you want to give a little bit of, did everybody take a look at Lonnie's email when it went through, or would it be helpful to have Lonnie give a little refresher?
This was on the stream.
Yeah, a refresher would be good. Yeah.
So the issue here is that a developer found a gaping loophole in our stream protection policy. Streams that are associated with the reservoirs are supposed to have 100-foot buffers, even in the growth area, if they're, even if they're intermittent. A developer figured out that they could disturb that, because when our ordinance was rewritten, I would say gutted, to be based on stormwater and instead of the Chesapeake Bay Act. The enforcement mechanism doesn't happen until there's a disturbance of 10,000 square feet. So what the developer figured out they could do is they could just go in and do incremental disturbances to the stream and remove the stream buffer, and then file with the Army Corps of Engineers to remove the stream entirely. Then when they put their development proposal forward, they said, well, there's not a stream there anymore. We shouldn't be required to abide by the stream buffer requirements. And a determination was made by the Army Corps of Engineers that it was no longer a stream, basically, because I forget the exact term that they used, but it was no longer either a perennial or intermittent stream. So therefore, the county's policy no longer covered it, nor would buffers be required. And needless to say, Crozet residents were livid about this. And it just further illustrates that, and if you go by the Chesapeake Bay guidance, they even have a beautiful diagram. I don't know how I could share this. Let's see. Let's see if I can find a way to share this.
So really the crux of this is, it sounds like it is okay. There is this loophole where someone can go in and bury an intermittent stream, as long as it's done under that 10,000 foot of land disturbance threshold.
Yeah.
Hello, this is I'm Frank Pohl, county engineer. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Your label.
It's like I have your name in front of my face, Tim.
Thank you.
Forwarded him the invite. We just started talking about this, Frank. Thanks for joining us. So Lonnie just gave a brief description. So you're jumping in right at the right time.
Let me see if I can change my name here. It's not spelling correctly.
Oh, okay. So let's see if I can share this image. Share screen. Nope, it's not letting me share anything.
You might need permission, from the.
I wonder if you might. Well, so Lonnie just gave a description, and I'm not 100% sure if it was exactly I'm sorry if it was exactly from, your perspective, how that project unfolded. So I don't know if you are able to give just like a quick overview of the stream determination and burying of the stream and the
You want me to do that or
changes
Lonnie?
of the water protection ordinance.
Lonnie did give us an overview, and it seems like there is this issue, what I think that many of us would perceive as a problem, the ability for someone to bury an intermittent stream as long as they do that under that 10,000 square foot threshold in terms of land disturbance.
That's accurate. Right now, if you're under 10,000 square feet of land disturbance, then the buffer does not apply. So if you read the buffer ordinance, the first paragraph, it says any erosion and sediment, I'm paraphrasing here, so bear with me if I don't get it perfectly, but any erosion and sediment control plan or Virginia stormwater management plan must provide buffers. And then it says in accordance with these regs, something like that. So if you're not required to have a plan, the buffer ordinance or the buffer section of the ordinance doesn't apply. So I've seen this, Lonnie. This is not really the situation that we had out there, okay? We had a point where there's, the Corps determined that it was a stream. It's not shown on USGS as a stream. If you look at the USGS maps, the portion that was piped. Only a portion of the stream that's on that property is shown on the USGS map as intermittent. But intermittent, regardless if it's intermittent or perennial on this property, as you all know, drains to the drinking water watershed, so it would have a buffer.
Frank, can you repeat really quickly something does not apply? I got confused about what you said, unless what were you saying? What doesn't apply unless?
The buffer ordinance section 17,600 doesn't come into effect until you have the requirement to have a plan, an ENS plan or a stormwater plan, a VSMP or VESCP.
Thank you.
So, and that is basically defined in the ordinance as any land disturbance over 10,000 square feet, so long as you're not exempt, right? So farming is exempt. Certain other things are exempt. Utilities are exempt. Utilities don't typically do landfilling type of operations. They will disturb things by putting in pipes, but they don't necessarily go in and pipe things, right? We have had a farm in that piped an intermittent stream to create more land for farming. And it was determined that it was a farming activity. We worked with the Corps on that one also. I will say that the Corps would not willy-nilly, and this is something we need to understand too, and maybe we should speak with Vinny, will not willy-nilly just allow somebody to go and pipe a stream. So they do push back on certain requests sometimes. And they also have requirements for mitigation if there are impacts. But if there's a high quality stream that someone's trying to impact, I've heard of them denying those requests. So there is some level that is a different jurisdiction, of course, and we shouldn't rely on them necessarily, but there is some level of oversight. They do issue lots of permits for stream impacts, and those impacts or those permits do have mitigation requirements. So there is a process for somebody to impact a stream through the Corps. And I think that's what we're talking about here, of not necessarily agreeing with those permits, right, that are issued by the Corps. and having our own higher standards, right? So that's why we're working towards, I know you all know about the new buffer, stream buffer overlay. Taking it out of the water protection ordinance and putting it in like a critical slopes overlay district or the floodplain overlay district, to actually define it as an overlay. And that way it can be enforced, I think, a little bit more consistently with the zoning ordinance, because the zoning, for instance, doesn't allow a house within a buildable area. A buildable area can't include the buffer. But if the activity is under 10,000 square feet, engineering says there's no buffer, right? Because it's in the WPO ordinance. So I think moving it to the zoning ordinance, which is done for a lot of Ches Bay areas, it's in zoning ordinances in other areas in other jurisdictions that are under the Ches Bay regulations. It's done through the zoning ordinance. And if you read the Ches Bay Act, it talks about enabling this through zoning. At least that's what I got out of it, which is kind of how we got to this point today. But I know I went from the beginning to where I think we're going without maybe answering all of your questions in the beginning about the Western Ridge one. So we can go back to that too if you want, or
Well, can I just clarify one thing? I think you did, Frank, but just in case before you move on, is that like Frank just said, the idea with the overlay district that I'm working on as part of the Stream Health Initiative with Frank and our zoning administrator and other folks in planning is that it wouldn't be tied to that land disturbing activity, that 10,000 square feet. So there would be if it goes through the district, that's like an overlay, and then there's permitted uses within that district. So I hope that might address some of the issues around piping streams.
It's good to know that there is a path forward that might prevent something like this from happening in the future, because it doesn't seem like that's what we want to be happening.
So
correct.
So something I want to point out. So let me see if I can do this again. So this is one area where the Chesapeake Bay Act already has guidance. And one of the reasons that I think consistency with the Bay Act is important, because they already address this. They have a document that already discusses an area where a stream is piped, and they show the RPA. The RPA doesn't go away because it's a designated area. It doesn't disappear just because a stream is piped. So the requirement to have a vegetative buffer, it still exists. So I think we really made a mistake in removing that association with the Bay Act. And I know that staff had brought forward the idea before, well, we can't call our buffers RPAs because those only apply to perennial streams. But I reviewed the code, and actually it doesn't say that. It says that that under the Bay Act, perennial streams you have to have an RPA on perennial streams, but you can also, it allows you to extend your RPA to intermittent streams as well. So I think what my recommendation would be that we go back to the guidance that was provided by DCR in their documents that directly addresses this situation. And
We're in agreement, and I think, Kim, we're using that language now, right? So we're using riparian buffers, right?
Well, we're using the term riparian buffer. We're not using the term resource protection area. And I still maintain that would be confusing because we aren't, well, I don't know. I mean, it's just a label. It's just a name. So we could define our resource protection area differently because we are not in the mandated tidewater counties. And I think it's something we could consider But we right now are calling them riparian buffers because my thought was that stream buffer doesn't encompass all of the types of wetlands and water bodies that are also included.
As long as we say somewhere that when we say whatever we call them riparian buffer, as long as we say consistent with the guidance of the state on resource protection areas, and we want to enumerate some of the requirements that we did not adopt the ag portion of the resource protection area. But besides that, I think, with the exception of the ag portion, I think that, we should be in compliance with the state guidance. It allows us to use their educational materials like the one you're seeing in front of you.
Yeah, the situation that we had at Western Ridge doesn't meet this sketch that you show. So because there wasn't a severing of the stream, there was a piping of the stream. And our ordinance talks about, it doesn't allow pipe streams. It talks about natural stream. The buffers are applied to natural streams. So we could make that clear in the future regs if we wanted to, if we need to.
But just to clarify my point, I think that it would remove the incentive for piping the stream if the RPA doesn't go away, even if the stream is piped, which is what the Chesapeake Bay Act would do. It removes the incentive. It wouldn't stop them from doing the things that they did. Well, it would stop some of the things. It would stop them from removing the buffer. But if they were to get an Army Corps of Engineers permit to remove the stream, and then they came back and put in their development proposal, the county could still say, hey, listen, according to the RPA, you still have to have a buffer there. I mean, so whether you bury it or not, it still has to have a buffer.
Yeah, I think that's our goal. Also, I think the goal for us is to not even allow the piping to begin with.
Yeah, and that would be the ideal thing.
So we're trying to figure out, we're trying to extend the buffer over the waterway itself, and not just from the top of bank. We can have higher regulations over and above the state, but the concern or not concern, or the question I have, I was told that the state, we can't interfere with state permits. And I don't know what that means and how far that goes. If that means that we can't interfere with the dredging of a stream, then yeah, I think what you're saying is we then need to include in our definitions, we need to remove natural from the definitions and then also include piped. So that's a good point. I don't know how to get there is all yet.
Yeah, and I have an update later about the overlay district that we're working on. So we're still sort of working through some of this language. But one of the things that Frank just mentioned is that the buffer isn't going to extend into the water because a buffer is the landward side, but the overlay district would cover the water, and the zoning ordinance covers the space above the water, even though the waters are waters of the state. Outside of the locality's jurisdiction, right, Frank? So I think that it may be an opportunity, but we're still sort of sorting out how to craft the language.
And maybe you're right, Lonnie. It's just because the Corps still recognizes it as a stream. I was told that even though it's piped, so they still recognize it as a perennial, or they don't really distinguish between perennial and intermittent, is what Vinny said. They won't do a determination, right, to make that distinction, but they still count it as a stream.
And I think that's important because I think what happened, one of the biggest concerns I have about piping of streams is that it's out of sight and out of mind. And it's not like there's still going to be like drains all along whatever road they built or throughout there that, that whenever it rains, it's still going to flow right in there. So it's not like water's not going to go directly in that stream just because it's buried. In fact, because now it's just a little drain hole, people are going to dump trash in it. People are going to pour motor oil in it, or people that,
I hope not.
I hope not. I mean,
we don't see that a lot, but
I mean, I certainly hope not, but my faith in human nature maybe isn't the highest sometimes.
Well, I would think more of like oil dripping off vehicles onto streets
Right.
is what we,
I mean, just because we can't, the big problem is just because you don't see the stream doesn't mean that, pollutants still aren't flowing into it and it still doesn't need protection.
Yeah, there's the other argument of, that's a good point, which we need to be able to answer because some have made that argument that if there's not a stream there, what are you protecting? So if it's piped, nothing can get into it. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly things can get into it. You can see those drains all along the sidewalks that goes directly.
if
into
there are drains, then yes, they can. You're right.
Are we overlooking the habitat aspect of the streams with this?
No, that's another aspect that's been brought up. And Kim can speak to that. She's been working on what do you call it, Kim?
The wildlife
connecting all of
corridor.
the wildlife corridors, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't know if that's what you're talking about. Yeah, and this group has talked about that a lot, and habitat connectivity and all of the benefits of the buffer, for water quality, but outside of that as well. So yeah, another thing that hopefully we can, help to address with this overlay district is just preserving that connectivity on the landscape, which, yeah, really does go away once the stream is underground.
Right. Well, and you have, 3 different layers of, within the herbaceous groups, 3 different layers that are in some cases totally missed or are dissected by, putting in piping where streams exist. And it has effects on a number of things. Just it depends on how large the stream is, or how long the stream is, how wide, and what's existed there in the past. So there are other considerations.
Well, I'm just really pleased that Frank, that you sounds like you are really with Kim and others will be working on this and trying to find a way that we can sort of write this loophole of sorts to prevent it from happening in the future. Or taking some.
Yeah, let's keep in mind, this piping is about as long as what occurs for some roadways that go into developments. This was not a very long piping. I'm not saying this is good. I'm not saying it was a good thing that happened or trying to justify it, but I look at it also from what was piped. And I think that's what the Corps did. This one was in an open field that didn't have trees along either side of it. It was cut into the existing grade of a farm in the past. It wasn't a farm recently, but the length of it was about what we saw. I don't know if it's Jarman's Gap or the one going in maybe to the one off of Jarman's Gap. Not that those are right also. I just wanted to point that out, that there are different levels of impacts. And this was at the head of what began as a stream from underneath the road, which is 240 there. The one on the farm that occurred, there were no trees on either side of the farm. It was all being farmed and cattle were all over the stream. So I think that one probably helped the water quality, quite honestly, because the cattle were no longer in the stream.
But that gets into some points that were made earlier before you got here about, maybe some of our issues with, conflicts between agriculture and water quality.
Yeah. But I mean, so I kind of, on this one, it's not that I didn't make a judgment call. It was based on the ordinance. Everything I did on this was based on what's written in the ordinance in conjunction and consultation with the Corps and our county attorney to make sure I wasn't making a mistake. And I don't feel I made a mistake, but I do believe it's an issue we need to address. And so and Kim, I know does, and the board does. And I know all of you do. So there will be opportunity for all of you to speak to this when this is developed. We have a public, process where if we're missing something, if you think that, Lonnie, that we could add something that, addresses like what you talked about tonight, language or whatever, we can work on it.
Well, so I have a couple concerns. Well, let me go back a little bit. I think the big issue for me, well, obviously, I live near Crozet, and yeah, Crozet, certainly people in Crozet were livid about this. But for me, the big issue is precedent, right? So as you said, maybe this is a small site. It's really the precedent that someone can do that really troubles me. And I know it probably bothers you as well.
It does. And we have another one. It's another project in Crozet that has a wetland that the Corps has issued a permit for. It's under 10,000 square feet, and the project hasn't come in for a WPO permit yet, but I understand it will be.
Yeah, so exactly. I think the other thing that concerns me is this is not the first overlay district that's been proposed. I would encourage you to use some other language besides that. There was a mountain overlay district that was proposed a while back, and it became extremely controversial and was killed by politics, really. I'm concerned a little bit that people say, oh, they're establishing this new thing, this stream overlay protection district. This is like the mountain overlay district they tried to propose before, and then it's going to be subject to the same kind of politics that there was in the past, as opposed to recharacterizing this as really we're just putting back what we lost when we revised this ordinance. I think at a minimum, just putting that little bit of language and saying that our buffers are RPAs, that accomplishes a huge amount right there. And it can do so much without a rewrite of the whole ordinance.
Well, we thought about where to put it, either in chapter 18, section 4, which is a zoning general regulations, or in an overlay, but make it a text overlay and not make it a map. But define it based on the words like we do today, which allows, and you don't like this, I think, Lonnie, I think you've expressed that you don't want any fluidity in it, but I don't see why. It has to work both ways. We have to be able to add streams. So we have to have some fluidity, in my opinion, based on field determination. So the thought is to put it in as a text overlay district, and that everything is defined by the text. And the text, that outlines certain criteria, just like the ordinance does now, either by USGS, field determination, a study, or core DEQ, or the Virginia Water Protection Program, or whatever that last one was. And then use the map as a reference, similar to the floodplain development, the flood hazard overlay, which allows some fluidity. It doesn't take away the hard line of what is and what isn't allowed, because we can define that better through the zoning ordinance and not have that trigger for land disturbance, right? So we'd have to find, but it does allow this, the text does allow it to be defined on the ground. So if a new stream, new intermittent does come up, then it should have a protection, just like the other way around. I haven't seen streams disappear, meaning beds go dry recently. I know we've had a drought. That was before I moved into Charlottesville, so I didn't experience that. So maybe that's the concern. And we'd have to think about that. And if
Usually it works the other way around, because increasing stormwater, it's more likely that intermittent streams are becoming perennial than intermittent streams disappearing.
Yeah, so we'd want to be able to upgrade them. Downgrading is if it were a map, it would be easier because I think we allow a downgrading in critical slopes, from preserve to manage by staff. What do you call that? Administrative. But we keep the requirements or certain requirements of managed slopes, for instance, but defining it into field based on the existing conditions is kind of what the Corps does also. So I think we're trying to be consistent with that. They don't have a map. They have a map that shows intermittent or perennial in the USGS map, but they also do determine things in the field and use that determination to guide their policy or their regulation of that particular body of water. So that's kind of the thoughts, is to do a text overlay, and maybe that if that's not the best way to do it, then we would probably look towards the general regulations.
I'm over. I think anything that's an improvement over where we are at is better. As I said, that word overlay district has some history to it that may invoke some politics that you don't want.
Yeah,
That's
a good point.
And so, I mean, yeah, I would like it to be a map, but I think, as you say, I'm not opposed to text.
Just to clarify, so the overlay district it can be an overlay district without a map. So like the entrance corridor one is defined the way that Frank is describing. So it's defined by the text, and the map would be the way that we're envisioning it now for the overlay district would be as it is in the GIS, like for informational purposes. So it's a guide, but what the text says is what rules, and there could be, like Frank said, case specific determinations so that if something does differ from what's on the map, we can still enforce it. So yeah, we're tossing around a lot of different options for where it would go, but I think was where we've settled for now in the overlay district. That could still change. But it's sure to be political, and I think there's going to be a lot of discussion. And like Frank said, there will be a public process, so there's also opportunity, for you all to come to the public hearing as well and review the ordinance.
I'm sorry, I'll add that from the political perspective. We're not proposing to change any of the exemptions like ag. We're not proposing that at this time, to change or to remove exemption of ag, for instance.
It's just that term. It's just that term if you just called it anything else. I just think it invokes, I don't know, if you go back and look at, Charleston Tomorrow articles or any of the things that happened around that period. I know it's many years ago since that happened, but it just seems like if you could just use a different term, just so you're not, and I think also clearly referencing that in many ways, we're going back to a policy that was already on the books, a perpetual conservation of those buffers.
Glad, I feel like your points, thank you, Lonnie, for bringing those up, because I think they are valid. And we look forward, I think, as a committee to being able to be supportive when the opportunity does come to provide that feedback and speak up at those meetings.
Oh, and then also just thanks for Frank for what you do. I know it's a thankless task, trying to play the line between the regulations and citizens that are frustrated. And so thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Lonnie.
Yeah, and thank you.
I try to do the right thing, and it is tough, but and I can't please everybody, but I try to do the right thing. So And where we can improve, we will try to improve. That's also something we strive to do here at the county. We got a lot of great staff. I've never worked with a lot of such good, professional folks here at the county, which is why I'm still at the county. Most of you probably don't know, I came from the development side myself 10 years ago and started working here in FES, and then county engineer more recently 5 or 6 years ago. So I try not to overreach, but I also try to enforce and put my foot down where I can. County attorney's been very good at helping with interpretation, and we had some other interpretations, Lonnie, about, as you recall, offsite purchases of nutrient credits that we were trying to be a little bit stricter on, and reaching out with DEQ, we were told we couldn't do that. So there are some things we just can't do without getting state approval. But with this buffer, we do have that authority. We just have to adopt it.
Great. That's good news. And thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us. And thank you, Lonnie, for your feedback, knowledgeable feedback. And we certainly appreciate that. And wish you the best of luck as you go forward with this task.
Well, thank you. You'll be hearing from us, I'm sure. So,
Thanks for coming, Frank.
okay, you're welcome. Have a good evening.
Thank you. All right, you guys. Well, that sounds hopeful. And we're going to move. We only have a half hour left. So Kim, would love to hear, you're doing some great things, and love to hear what you're up to.
Yeah, I'll share a few things. I'll try to be concise since we have so little time left. And we've talked about some of the things already, so that's good. So the first thing on my list is I sent a link to the materials, but I did want to just share with you all about the reintroduction of the James spiny mussel, which is really exciting. And just that I've been working with DWR to bring this resolution to the board and get their support. There's a provision in the state code that requires that, and they did provide support. So DWR is moving forward. I'm not really directly involved in the rest, but I'm sure there'll be an opportunity to go and see the release, and there'll be some publicity around that if anybody's interested in the mussel reintroduction when it's actually happening. So that's very exciting. I also, this is a random jump, but there were questions. I noticed I wasn't at the April meeting, but I listened to it, and there were questions about in-person meetings. And so I just wanted to let everyone know that there was a board work session on May 18th that you may or may not have tuned into, but they're talking about how, what they call reconstitution. So getting back to hybrid and in-person meetings over the next 6 months or so. And so the board and the planning commission, as you know, are already doing hybrid meetings, and there's another tier of boards and commissions that will be next to going hybrid. And this committee, as far as I know, is in the third tier, which is not going to have a hybrid option. I think primarily because of staff constraints. So my understanding at this time is that in September, when the ordinance expires, we will be going back to in-person. Of course, that's like barring any health crises that arise between now and then. So that's what I know. And I know that it's going to be a little tougher with attendance because it's easier, to join virtually, but that's what we know for now. We talked a little bit earlier about the comp plan, so I was going to provide an update about that. I think you're all aware of the growth management policy, and so we've talked about that. There was earlier this week a presentation about the draft land use build out analysis for the development area. And I think that's really interesting. If you'll have an opportunity to watch it, if you haven't yet, you can watch the recording. And related to the comp plan also, I wanted to share that the goals for the natural resources program were developed when David Hanna, who was my predecessor, for those of you who don't know. And the goals for the program were defined by working with an advisory work group, and they were part of a strategic plan for a 3-year plan from 2017 to 2019. So those goals are getting a little outdated. Some of them are still relevant, but I feel a lot of them need to be updated. So that process will happen as part of the comp plan update as we look to the natural resources chapter. So I would love to, work with this group and hear your feedback. And there'll be lots of opportunities to talk about that. I think it's going to be happening more towards the fall, but we could have a discussion here prior to, to sort of warm up to that. I think that would be helpful. I'll just keep going, and then if folks have questions at the end, I can do that. I wanted to mention also that on June 15th, on the board agenda is a presentation on the staff evaluation of the ACE program. And I know a lot of folks are interested in that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention because you might want to tune into that. And that's not anything that I think where decisions will be made. It's a review of the program that was requested by the board. Again, in advance of this sort of update to the comp plan, where I think we'll be looking more closely at those programs. So sorry for bouncing around, but I'm going to jump down again to something completely different, which is the spotted lanternfly outreach. I actually don't know if folks on this committee have done any work on this recently, but I wanted to share that I met with some folks from Virginia Cooperative Extension and Rod Walker earlier this week about outreach efforts, since we're getting to this point where folks will be seeing them potentially. And we talked about the mailer. We don't have staff or resources to do that right now, but we are going to do a digital outreach campaign through the email, through VC's channels, and through social media. So I know the education group is already working on a July post, so maybe there'll be an additional post related to spotted lanternfly. But I'm happy to coordinate with whoever from the education group wants to work on that. And then I think it would be great to also, Christine, like you did last year, get those flyers in the kiosks, and we'll get them in the engagement van. And to Emma, who I think dropped off, but for the Pollinator Festival, all of the educational materials. Carrie also mentioned if folks want to do more, Carrie Swanson from VCE, they can get in touch with her to monitor traps, sharing with other social media networks, and also potentially sign up to do some targeted direct outreach if there is an outbreak, of going to the neighborhood and going door to door like they did last year. Did we lose Christine? Well, anyway, I'm almost near the end. So the last thing I wanted to update on is just the Stream Health Initiative projects. We already talked about the overlay district, and that's moving forward. You all saw the Environmental Stewardship Hub, which is the first phase of the new landowner education project. Oh, good, Christine, you're back. I wanted to thank you and also give kudos to Christine, because she really contributed so much content to the hub, and we're going to continue working on that and improving it over time. And the next stage of that project is working on the new landowner the new resident guide, and better developing resources for landowners, like where to find cost share and things like that. So we'll be working toward that we don't have a budget for the natural resources program for FY24. So I am uncertain as to whether we can move forward with any direct targeted mailings as was planned. And then 2 more quick things related to the Stream Health Initiative that I wanted to share. The FY24 approved budget did support the creation of a restoration and mitigation manual, which is directly related to the overlay district. So that's very exciting. And we also, by working with FES, found some resources in the water resources program to hire a contractor for the low impact development study. So another project that's moving forward from the Stream Health Initiative. So that's really exciting, and I'll share more about it as things unfold. Just leave it at that. It's a lot.
It's a lot of exciting things for sure. And so I had a couple questions. Kim,
Sure.
that list of goals, where is the list of, is there some place where we can take a look at that? And
Yes, I will share it with you. I actually took it down from the website because it was very outdated, but I'll share it with the group, and we can maybe put it on an upcoming agenda to review those goals and maybe discuss them.
yeah. And I just want to say to the group, I think that we really need to advocate for having some budget for the natural resource program, at least a few $1,000s, because it becomes so difficult to do anything. Just for example, it's just getting a few signs, or for the Nomo areas, or for this land owner outreach program. I mean, it seems like we've got to really try to be on top of that and to advocate for that. So I wanted to put that out there. And I got kicked off because of my internet, so I missed some of that. And I think that I got most of it though. I missed out on a bit of the spotted lanternfly, but I do want to say that I'm going to be with the Master Gardeners. I'm going to be at the Ix Farmers Market on the 1st and 3rd Saturdays every month now for the mobile help desk, and I have the spotted lanternfly information that I'm going to be taking with me. So there is going to be, and I know that's happening at the Crozet Market as well.
Well, I'll look for you on Saturday then. What
Yeah.
time will you show up at 8 o'clock or?
From 8 to 11.
Okay, I'll be there this Saturday. I'll look for you then. That's great. Yeah.
Oh, and Christine, I didn't get to share at the meeting early. I've heard from Bruce, and he's out of power and out of internet, so that's
Okay.
why he wasn't here.
Yeah.
And Christine, if you need the box of supplies at
Well,
all.
they have.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, so you're stuck with it for a while longer.
We can get it to Emma for the Pollinator Festival.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Definitely need to do that. All right. Thank you, Kim, for that. And we have 20 minutes left. And so I know we have the review of the goals and recommendations for goal number 1 and number 2. But I do want to just add right now that Leah, she wasn't able to make the meeting, but she did say, I have a text from her that it sounds like there was some progress made. She says the corridors report that Virginia Tech has hired a PhD grad student with bobcat trapping experience, and she's going to move here to the Albemarle County in August. So it sounds like that part of that project that she's been working on may be making some progress. So that is her report. And quickly before we look at that, the BAP goals, has the policy group been meeting? Have they met? Have you guys met in April or May?
We've not been able to organize schedules.
Yeah,
And with my concussion, I didn't even try.
yeah, we made some attempts and they did not pan out. But we will try again.
Okay, fantastic.
I'm functional again mostly, so at least that won't be an inhibitor.
That makes a difference, right?
Sort of related to policy. I should mention to those of you who don't know already that I was appointed to the Albemarle County Planning Commission.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations.
Congratulations.
So, so I assume that I can keep this seat because I think Karen did at one point too. So at least for now, you'll have a member of the Planning Commission on the Natural Heritage Committee.
Wow.
And your first meeting will be next Tuesday.
Well done. Good.
Well, that is great news, Lonnie.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, we're glad, very proud to have you representing us there, representing, well, Albemarle County residents there on the Planning Commission. That's fantastic. Great news. All right. And I don't know, in terms of education and outreach, we have those Instagram posts that I'm going to continue working on and getting those out there that Emma has been working on. In addition to that, there's the Pollinator Festival that's going to be happening in Scottsville. And so, and I can't remember, that is going to be this month. So hopefully we'll get that information out to everybody. All right.
Christine, can I mention one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
For those of you who don't know, the Master Gardeners have partnered with the center at Belvedere to put a pollinator garden in place, and I think also work on the rose garden that are there. There's a series of presentations that are being made about every 3 months. The next one is next Tuesday night at 6:30, and the title of that is Planting for Pollinators. Steve Spitzer, who was a classmate of mine, and Christine's from last year's Master Gardener class, and Michelle Merdeza, who is a landscape designer, will also be making a presentation as well related to pollinators. And I think Christine's, not Christine, I'm sorry, Michelle's presentation is also very interesting, related to how the garden has been planned. The pollinator garden has been planned and how it has been created. And she had a large part of that, along with a group of folks that contributed to that. So if you have time, you're available, feel free to RSVP. You can do that on the center's site, which is thecentercville.org. And again, that's Tuesday night at 6:30 at the center.
All right, that sounds really great. And the Master Gardeners also have this healthy landscape program that that they're just kicking off right now. And it's, the idea is to give people who are interested guidance at how to make their yards more wildlife friendly, taking into a lot of different things, looking at runoff, reducing mowing, so many great things. And so I actually get to do a site visit coming up here, so I'll report back how it goes.
And we have 22 new Master Gardeners that just graduated on May the 3rd. So they're in the community now.
Yeah, they're all going to be out there spreading the word, which is great. All right, shall we try to take a look at, Kim, what do you guys think? Do you guys want to embark in looking at these goals? They've been thumbs up, thumbs down. What do you guys think?
I think
I'm
we're running
exhausted.
out of time here.
I think, can I make a suggestion, Christine?
Yes.
Because I know it's real late and we need to end at 7:30 for Carolyn, but I was looking at goal 2, and I might just, if you all are open to, me just sharing it on the screen, since it's related to
Yeah,
the ACE review that will be on the agenda June 15th. So I think it would be valuable if you all don't mind, just to read it and think about it between now and then. Are you seeing it?
we are.
Yeah.
I didn't hear
Yeah.
any agreement or disagreement, so I just did it.
I see it, Peggy.
We're a quiet group.
Yeah, I think that it's good to keep this in mind and also to, listen into the report and then have an opportunity as a committee to give some feedback to the board as well. Keeping this in mind, because this is some of the things that we were sort of talking about this at the beginning, right?
Right.
If we're going to give tax advantage or provide resources, we should be getting something back in terms of biodiversity protection. Yeah.
I hear a bird.
I assume that everyone was reading it. So
Yeah, I was reading it.
aloud.
It's
We can reshare those consolidated goals, Christine, too, so everyone has them fresh in hand,
Yeah, for sure.
the BAP goals.
I am supportive. That sounds good.
Yeah. I also have something interesting to share with everybody. I don't know if you heard about the Woodridge Solar Project. That's, they're proposing 640 acres of solar panels in southern Albemarle County. And I just happen to sit in the middle of that project. My property is. So I will be able to give you updates on that. But one thing that I actually has really been bothering me is a lot of that industrial forest land. There were hundreds of acres where herbicide was applied to it, and there's not a living thing on that land right now. Nothing. It's completely barren. And so I have a question in terms of how have we allowed that to happen?
Did they do that so they could put the solar in?
No, this is for to replant. I don't know, because it's forest land, but there is
Oh my God.
there is not a living thing.
Why would they need to herbicide for forest? I mean, fire's the perfect thing for that. That's what we've always done with ours when replanting is wow.
Well, and I plan to reach out to our forester, because a lot of the buffers were inadvertently hit as well. And when it happened, I was home when they were applying the herbicide, and he assured me that they knew what they were doing.
Oh,
And
man.
so,
That's a good sign right there.
yeah.
Nothing to see here. Go away, lady.
Yeah. So although I'm not really in favor of this industrialized landscape, perhaps it's better than complete and absolute destruction. And Lonnie, I
we can
wanted to
prevent.
reach out to you.
We can do to prevent complete and absolute destruction and not have to simply accept the industrial use of especially forested lands. It should be reclaimed and
Yeah, I will send you some pictures. And Lonnie, if you have any suggestions about that, I would love to chat with you.
Well, I
It's always like
don't
an
have
opinion
any,
piece.
I don't have any suggestions per se. I will say that when people are doing forestry for pines, particularly, so if their goal is to come back and so if they've cleared the area and then they want to replant with like loblolly, for example, which is not really an Albemarle County native, then they will hit the whole place with herbicide, because otherwise, if they just cut it, then it's they're going to get stump sprouts from all the hardwoods. They're just going to come right back up.
Well,
So
And we
I'm
can
not
use
saying-
fire for that because we've done it. So how, I think a charge for our group is to figure out what we can do to, at the very least, disincentivize and disencourage herbicide use, provide alternatives, find ways to use our buffers for good. You know, there are mechanisms that, you know, maybe they fall short of rules and regulation, but there's a lot that we need to do to discourage this kind of stuff.
Well,
There-
I think education, certainly, I think we have limited ability to do a whole lot within, yeah, I think there's a limited ability to sort of disincentivize, but we could certainly incentivize or encourage and educate about better ways to do things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a loblolly forest, you know, it's a pine forest. And so there was lots of reseeding of pine, and the pine was hit. It was all the pine, everything's dead. So I just don't understand because
Well, and that just seems ignorant because there are herbicides that are specific for hardwoods. So if they're spraying a general herbicide over areas that just doesn't even make any sense. I will say if they are clearing trees and removing stumps, that's no longer forestry. And if Frank was still here in the meeting, he'd tell you that too.
Yeah.
And there
it-
needs to be water protection, that we need better protection for water habitat, et cetera. Herbicides are not simply acceptable, and the consequences are great. So label directions are not. They're just to you personally, to the water systems downstream, you know, it's just, we need to do better.
And their use in agriculture is more and more prevalent. I mean, you can, you know, if you go out and for a country drive, you can see acres and acres of farmland that is just brown right now. As they
Marketing is very powerful.
Mhm.
It does seem like fire would be more economically efficient. And that might be an argument we could take. I'm not sure where we are, like where our position is in those dialogue, but when it comes to purchasing the herbicide and applying it, like that's a lot of cost, and fire is much faster, I think.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's faster.
Herbicide is very expensive. I'm afraid I'm gonna have to leave. My dog is giving me a hairy eyeball. And I'm gonna take her out. So I'll catch up with you all next month, though. It's
All right,
this
Peggy,
Peggy.
glad you were able to join us. You
Yeah.
stay well.
Sorry to leave a little bit early, but I'll talk to you soon. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, Peggy.
Bye.
All right. Well, I would say we're getting, if anybody has any last minute thoughts, hate to leave on such a negative note there, but get out to Darden Tower and check out the Nomo areas.
Steve Spitzer will include a little bit about no pesticide use in his presentation. I've already heard the first version of that. So for those adults, and will only be adults and probably older adults, but they will hear that. So there is a small effort for education that will happen, and I will let others know that this is an issue of concern, not just for master gardeners, but for members on the committee as well. And I'm sure there's others in the community that are equally concerned about this, but we maybe need to do more, a little bit of the educational outreach we were talking about, as well as continue to look for opportunities to partner with other groups.
Yeah. Maybe I should call up NBC News. They're always saying, do you have a problem or concern? I say, yeah, I do. You need to come out to Southern Albemarle and see what they did to the land there.
That's one way to go. I don't know how many politicians or political folks would get upset from that,
People.
but
We don't need
you have to-
politicians, you need
you have
people.
you have to step out in a leadership role like you have, and take those risks. So I certainly would support that.
I'll come stand next to you, Christine. You just let me know.
All right, thanks, you
I'll
guys.
hold a sign.
All righty. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Carolyn, for hanging in with us there. And thank you guys for showing up so we could have our meeting. Through the power outages, we did it.
All right.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
All
Thanks,
right.
Carolyn.
I
Bye.
move we adjourn.
Have a good evening.
Hey, Carolyn, I have a question for you after you stop recording.